Live from Miami, Florida, broadcasting around the world. You're listening to Patriots Perspective with Christi Tasker. Your news behind the government's facade. Don't fall victim to propaganda or spend another 30 days in the tech gulag. Turn off your tell-lie vision and just listen. Hear the most mind-opening hours of your life as we interview whistleblowers and real patriots for uncensored truth. The Commie News Network and Fake Book cannot control the power of Jesus Christ. Therefore, they have no power over us. There aren't enough Vegas strippers to fake check what's coming. Put in your earphones and avoid the tech tyrants. Subscribe to patriotsperspective.com now and see the evidence and action items to help you take back your God-given rights, government, and expose Satan and his demons taking up residence in your community. Be sure to hit the like or rumble button and comment to tell us where you're holding the line.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Patriots Perspective, where we are bringing truth right to your screens. Thank you so much for choosing us instead of the mainstream media, where you will find out things today that they won't be discussing for the next maybe 10 years. Who knows? But however, I believe things are going to start to become hard and fast. Today, I have with me one of my favorite people. He didn't even know that he was one of my favorite people, Dr. Jerome Corsi, who was part of my Great Awakening. Dr. Corsi, thank you so much for joining me here on Patriots Perspective. And
my pleasure.
Thank you for your work and everything that you've done. You're a great author. You've been a great educator for those of us who had no idea what was going on inside our government. So you were one of the people that I listened to very early on in 2019, 2020. Listen, you had no idea who I was. Maybe your moderator did in the comments, but that was about it. You were always able to answer questions. So I'm very grateful to have you here today.
Well, thank you. You're very kind. I appreciate it.
So, Dr. Corsi, tell us exactly what your greatest moment was where you realized like something is not quite right within the government.
Oh, that occurred a long time ago. I mean, I kind of grew up with that recognition. I'm considerably older. I grew up in the 50s. I was born in 1946. And I'm 78. I'll be 79 years old this year. So I remember politics in the 1950s. And even then, as a kid, I was very suspicious of what was going on in terms of the news reporting. I remember very clearly the attempted Suez Canal takeover that occurred in the 50s with Nasser. I remember Nasser's invasions of Israel. I remember the United Nations getting us into Korean War. I was probably only 4 or 5 years old when that happened. And it always seemed to me that when Eisenhower gave his speech, his famous farewell speech, and that was right at the 1961 or 60 as he was leaving office. And I was then about, 14 years old. I really understood the military industrial complex. And I had seen that the wars that had been caused, even the Korean War, which even as a kid I thought was pretty ridiculous. I mean, what we were going to do with Korea, fighting a war in Korea, when we had just finished World War II, and MacArthur, who was then our general, had advised not to fight another war in Asia, and here we were. It seemed to me that we were really dealing with China. I mean, I was just aware of these issues as a kid. And then, of course, when the Kennedy assassination occurred and I was 17 years old, I had a full recognition the day it happened that, I thought this was a government operation. I didn't think that Lee Harvey Oswald was the assassin, especially after he was himself killed on that Sunday after the Friday assassination in what looked like a silencing mob operation. They wanted to silence him. And when it occurred, at 17 years old, I thought that I would write the book that explained that Lee Harvey Oswald wasn't the killer. And now I've written with David Mantik a book called The Assassination of JFK, The Final Analysis. I have it right here. And we showed in the optical density measurements of the X-rays that the 3 remaining X-rays in the archives are all fakes. They were all altered to mask frontal shots. Here's the book.
And this is available on Amazon, correct?
Yeah, this was just published in January 2024. It's over 570 pages long. Got a lot of illustrations in it all the way through. We illustrate everything we're talking about. And what it proves is the X-rays clearly show Dr. Mantic is a radiation oncologist. For more than 4 decades, he's been reading X-rays for cancer patients. He has a PhD, and radiology was his subject. The X-rays show 2 frontal shots that hit Jack Kennedy. One at the temporal bone that blew out the back right of his head, and one that hit his forehead and left a trail of bullets across the top of his head, probably a lead, just a liquid lead bullet that you see the traces of it. Probably could not be removed in the pre-autopsy surgery that was done to Alder Kennedy's wounds. So the book has been very definitive, very well received, and it shows that Kennedy was assassinated by a conspiracy that involved the government, the CIA, the Secret Service. And I've written 2 books on the Kennedy assassination. This is the second one. I've been naming since more than 10 years ago that Allen Dulles was one of the main conspirators after he was fired from the head of the CIA by Jack Kennedy after the failed Bay of Pigs operation. And so these were awakenings that I had growing up. And I was always very interested in political events. I mean, I watched the news from a very early age and would read the newspapers. I would read the sports pages and the politics. And I did that growing up and understood what was going on. So by the time I got my PhD at Harvard, I was in my 20s in political science. And I had written 3 books as an undergraduate, largely with professors who wanted me to assist them in their books. They had begun asking me to publish my term papers in college. And so that way I began actually doing academic publications when I was yet a teenager. And I've published more than 50 books in my life, and more than 30 since 2004. That's when my current political career really started. There's just a list of some of my books. The Unfit for Command, which I published with John O'Neill, that was the book on the Swiftboat book against John Kerry. That book was the one that really launched my current career as a political author and commentator. And of course, that book was instrumental in defeating John Kerry. And my co-author, John O'Neill, was at Navy, and he took over John Kerry's Swiftboat when John Kerry left Vietnam. I had worked with civil violence research centers in the United States, and I was assigned to Bird Dog John Kerry when he was doing the Vietnam Veterans Against the War. John O'Neill and I had known each other since we were teenagers. We had debated each other. He went to Annapolis, and I was at Case Western Reserve in Cleveland, Ohio. And we reconnected to do this book. And that became a #1 New York Times bestseller, and it launched my current career writing books largely on presidential politics, on key issues like immigration, or I've written 3 books on Iran, and I cover a wide range of topics. And you can see from the book, and I've been very involved. I played a role in each of Donald Trump's 3 presidential elections, and I've known Donald Trump since actually for about 40 years. I had a career in finance. You can see all the books I've written. That's a good list of them. That's some of them. And I've written books on history, the Battle of Bastogne, No Greater Valor. That's one of the books I've liked the best. My books on the truth about energy, global warming, and climate change recently, and the truth about neo-Marxism, cultural Maoism, and anarchy are 2 books of a trilogy I plan to write. The 3rd book will be on the uh, on the artificial intelligence, all the idea of perpetual life extension and transhumanism. I'm going to combat all of those ideas that we can replace God and become superhumans. And so I'm very.
Because it definitely seems like. What's your take on the new announcement regarding the AI RMNA vaccines in terms of what was announced yesterday regarding the cancer vaccine?
Well, I'm very suspicious of Larry Ellison. I think, and that whole group is into vaccines. I think they're the dark side of Silicon Valley. They really want to control human beings, and they want to think that they can perfect a class of superhumans, which they include themselves in, through artificial intelligence and through implanting chips in their brains and merging us with machine computers. We're going to become a highly intelligent species, but only a few of us are going to achieve that level. I mean, this is World Economic Forum, and so Trump has a blind spot on the danger of vaccines because he hates to admit mistakes, and he was conned into going along with this Operation Warp Speed, which produced a set of vaccinations on COVID-19 that I think are very dangerous. And I think the medical research confirms that they are killing a lot of people, and they were designed to kill people. They were certainly not vaccines. They didn't prevent you from getting the disease. And I think the whole COVID-19 was a psychological operation, and these people in Silicon Valley have not given up. I think Donald Trump was ill-advised to be so, they say they're going to spend $750 billion, and that's, of course, appealing for its economic value. But the goals of what they want to achieve in medicine, I think, are highly suspect in terms of being part of a depopulationist agenda, not really a successful medical agenda. Trump is also talking about signing an executive order which would prohibit us from funding gain of function research on, in biological warfare. And I hope he does sign such an executive order. But I would really like to see Robert Kennedy Jr. get confirmed. I'd like to see a massive, actually shutdown, or of CDC and the NIH, all the government agencies, which I think are corrupted by big pharma. So I'm very suspicious of the announcement we heard yesterday. I wasn't pleased with it, and we'll probably try to find ways over the next period of time to get to Donald Trump the information that he should really reevaluate his position on vaccines. After I wrote that book on Kennedy assassination, I got in touch with Robert Kennedy Jr., who has endorsed the book. I mean, he has not publicly. He had his radiologist, a guy named Dr. Ted Fogarty, check it out, and Dr. Fogarty told Robert Kennedy Jr. the book was 100% accurate in its analysis and its evidence. And so Robert Kennedy praised the book, and we've had conversations over it. And I want to advance some of the medicine goals. I'm about to launch some telemedicine companies. I've been working on them for 2 years. And Dr. Fogarty and those around Ted Kennedy would like to introduce barometric treatments across the country. And I would like to use one of my telemedicine programs, GetLongevitymeds.com, to focus on delivering barometric medicine around the country. I'm hoping to get that advanced once we have Robert Kennedy confirmed.
So you have longevitymeds.com?
Yes, longevity. I've got 3 telemedicine sites. One is for Spanish-speaking people to work with Spanish-speaking patients. We're working on getting that one advertised now. I'll put it in chat. It's Habla con an MD.
Okay. Great. Because that's going to be really important. While you're putting that in chat, I'll go ahead and ask my next question in terms of what exactly, in terms of Robert Kennedy Jr., what would you like to see occur ideally with our medical system? I think that's
Well, I think we've got to have a repudiation of the big farm goals on these mRNA vaccines. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not a medical doctor. I read the medical literature and I'm keep conversant with it. That's Oblicon and MD. It's designed for Spanish-speaking people to speak with Spanish-speaking doctors. We're going to make an effort to launch that starting now.
Okay.
In fact, have a meeting later this afternoon on getting it on social media. And I'm going to go back to my Corsi
Okay.
Nation website. We're going to relaunch. My current website is The Truth Central.com, and I'm going to go back to Corsi
Well, let's
Nation.
talk about this. What are they gonna? What are like people can basically? This is just where they could actually just have a human doctor over telemedicine to take care of basic issues for
Primary care. You
okay.
can get prescriptions.
$dollars, I see. So
Yeah,
that's
and
great.
prescriptions where that you can get electronically sent to a pharmacy near you. And the advantage of it is you can, if you're Spanish speaking, you can talk with a doctor who speaks your language. And
Yes.
that's really important in, I think, all human interactions, but especially in medicine. And so I think this one's going to do very well once we get it publicized. The challenge to that one is just to get the word out on it.
Yep.
And then
Well, you're no better place, Dr. Corsi. I'm in Miami, so just in case you didn't know, Miami is about 80% Spanish speaking.
yes.
So that's a great place to start. So when we're talking about medicines and things, are you guys vetting the doctors that are going on the telemed route? How are you guys working that portion?
Well, typically, I mean, I did a lot of the telemedicine. I got into it during the pandemic, and I got to know Dr. Zelenko, and I got very much into his protocol with hydroxychloroquine, zinc, and azithromycin, and then ivermectin when it came along. And we literally helped thousands of people get those medications that couldn't
Yes.
get them in any other way. And so I'm very much into the alternative medicines. I'm very suspicious of government medicine. I'm very suspicious of big pharmacies' involvement in controlling drugs to heal everything. I don't think necessarily that's the way we heal. I think I'm much more interested in improving people's immune systems and boosting immunities, which is our natural defense against disease. So I read the medical literature. Our doctors are going to be, we don't dictate the medicine to the doctors, although the doctors we tend to be very sympathetic to the kinds of goals we have. In other words, certainly when Oblicon MD, was born out of the system where we were doing the hydroxychloroquine and zinc and Dr. Zelenko's protocol, those doctors had to be in agreement with Dr. Zelenko, which meant that they were opposed to the government protocol, which demonized hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. And so therefore we did have a selective group of doctors at that time. At the moment, since there's not a pandemic and there's a limited number of Hispanic doctors, we're probably going to be less stringent on wanting to make sure the doctors are kind of in agreement with the medicine our clients are going to want to have. I mean, during the pandemic, we were drawing an audience of people who were desperate to get Dr. Zelenko's protocol. I think here the Oblicon MD is going to be drawing an audience that much more just needs to talk to a doctor in their own language. And I don't think there's going to be any kind of political objective to it. And I suspect that when Bobby Kennedy gets in, we're going to do much more examination about vaccines, especially for children. I'm very much concerned about the number of vaccines babies are given and the relationship to autism. And I think that research is pretty convincing.
Do you think that Robert Kennedy is going to basically cut and immediately alter, because President Trump could sign an executive order which could immediately alter the vaccination schedule, the required vaccination schedule, so that parents could actually choose and have an actual, this is really what's needed, if any at all, or just remove the mandate altogether, so that schools and work and stuff cannot require any kind of vaccinations.
Well, I think, first of all, the vaccines that are given babies, you can refuse to take right now. I mean,
Okay.
my daughter just had a baby and selected the hospital for a hospital that would respect that she didn't want the baby vaccinated at all. And her husband, it's their first child, so her husband actually moved into the hospital and could stay with her 24 hours a day. So the baby never left their care to make sure that the baby was not vaccinated. And that can be done today.
Okay.
I think the idea of the mandates to vaccinate violated a lot of civil rights, a lot of personal freedoms. And certainly for those who had religious objectives or other objections, they should have been able to opt out. I think that the mandatory, the entire pandemic, as far as I'm concerned, was a psychological operation, an intelligence agency orchestrated psychological operation designed to see how far they could go in controlling the population of the world. And it was frighteningly successful.
Yes.
And they took a bad flu and made it into a pandemic. Donald Trump was presented with a statistical analysis which projected that millions of people would die. It didn't happen. The statistics that they were using were bogus from the beginning. I mean, I knew that from the get-go. When I looked at the genome of the virus that was being published, it was pretty clear to me that the virus came out of a lab and it had been engineered to. It was not a natural occurring virus. It was a virus that had been implanted with different elements, largely, I think, from HIV. And so, therefore, I could see. I've been following Dr. Fauci even back to what he was doing during the AIDS epidemic. And again, there were natural remedies that Dr. Fauci would not let be used. And the remedies that he had ultimately, again, were damaging and hurtful to people. And that was I think that was the first dry run of what became COVID-19. And I think that this demon world Economic Forum and One World Government crowd, the globalists, have in mind another pandemic, which probably will hit in the first year of the Trump administration's second term.
I don't understand how Noah Harari has, people can't see through what he is saying. I mean, he tells point blank, that they want to inject you with something where they can control you, and they're hoping to do that. I think the original date was 2021, and then 2025, and now 2030. They're constantly moving the needle, all in the name of climate change, all while they're doing nothing. I mean, we can't control the climate, in a certain way, as they're stating we can, while they're taking monies. Right.
Yeah. I've got a couple of books. Let me show you. I've been reading Harari's current book. I've read all of his books, and I think they're complete trash. This book is his new one, Nexus. And as far as Harari's concerned, everything's an algorithm. Everything is a narrative. There is no objective truth.
Right.
Everything's a narrative. And so therefore he believes that, that we don't have any human rights, that he says things like you cut into a human being, you see the lung and the heart and all the rest, you don't find any human rights. Those are just constructs. Well, he's a postmodernist, and he is not rooted in the idea of objective rights or objective knowledge. And for him, everything is subjective and subject to perceptions. Everything is a fiction. And he is very deeply connected to the idea that human beings are basically unnecessary and worthless. So he thinks that the vast majority of human beings are just utilizing the resources of the earth to ultimately to the detriment of the human species. He doesn't see us as being able to For me, the scarcest resource is not oil or anything. It is human intelligence. That's the scarcest resource.
Well,
So,
the interesting thing is he's also an outspoken homosexual and a proponent of transhumanism. So, I mean, you know, his values are probably not what mine and your values are in terms,
right.
you know, and actually let's play this clip really quick. Just let people hear exactly what he's saying from his own lips.
I can't hear that.
Okay, let's see.
The present and the future.
Got it.
History is the study of change, of how things change. And therefore also it's about the present and the future. And we are now at a moment of greater change than at any previous time in history, which is why history is more relevant than ever.
History began when humans invented gods, and history will end when humans become gods. That we are now acquiring divine abilities of destruction and creation, and we are on the verge of creating new beings that will have abilities traditionally considered to be divine abilities. So we are in the process of creating gods.
So maybe the last story that still holds the country together is the story of the dollar. The last thing they still agree about is the value of a dollar. And even this is under attack because you have the cryptocurrency people who want to dismantle. And just imagine what happens if suddenly each party has its own currency. And they go to the grocery store, and if it's a person from a different party, no, I don't accept that.
And that's
Well,
already,
those are all
already,
typical
Yeah.
Harari. Yeah, that's a pretty good sample of what he thinks.
yeah. And as in terms of what he thinks is not what you and I think, and it's probably not what most of our audience thinks. So in terms of, you know, how did we get from JFK to this guy? Because we assassinated a president. By the way, Dr. Corsi, my grandfather was the one who actually delivered the message to JFK that Fidel was trying to take over Cuba. So there's something that my grandfather knew. He was not a huge proponent of JFK. I don't know if he just felt that he could have done more, or that he didn't do the right things at the right time when he had the opportunity to do it.
Well,
So,
when Castro first came on, he was celebrated in the United States because it was looked at as a popular uprising against Batista, who had been a dictator and under the control of the mob. And it was not clear that Castro was going to become communist. Initially, the coverage of Castro was quite favorable, as I recall, in the United States. But then Castro actually came to the United States and was treated badly by Richard Nixon. And Castro decided that he was going to align with Russia because he would get more support from Russia. I think there was a period of time when Castro would have aligned with the United States had we made the right overtures. But I've always attributed the losing of Castro to Richard Nixon. I'm not sure what Eisenhower would have done. It was when Richard Nixon was vice president in 1958, as I recall, 1958. I remember following it as a kid very closely. And I had been hopeful that Castro would not go communist at that time. At any rate, the revolution was going to succeed because Batista, as a dictator, had very little popular support and was corrupt. So the Cuban people were ready for a change. Now, Jack Kennedy, evaluating Jack Kennedy, I think Jack Kennedy matured in the office. I think Jack Kennedy realized that we needed to coexist with the Soviet Union and that going to nuclear war and the Cuban Missile Crisis was a bad idea. I think some of the things that happened to Jack Kennedy, including the Bay of Pigs, where the CIA lied to him, he realized that, you know, the deep state was not on his side, that he was being manipulated by the deep state, and he wanted to break up the CIA into 1,000 pieces as he said, but the mistake was to say that and not do it. That created an enemy that was determined to make sure that they got Kennedy before Kennedy got them. Now, Harari is part of this postmodernist theme that comes out of thinkers like Jean Baudrillard, another one of these nutty French intellectuals, who says that there is no reality. It's all how we construct reality. In other words, he wrote a book. He would write books like, there is no Iraqi war while the Iraqi war was going on. Well, he knew there were people fighting in Iraq. What he meant was that the story about the war, what the narrative about it was constructed that was false. We didn't remove Saddam Hussein from power. There was a lot of things that never changed. All the rhetoric about the war, he said, was simply the false narrative. And so therefore, everything was a narrative to these guys. So everything is a construct. Like if we study philosophy, and I've written about this extensively, it comes out of thinkers like Wittgenstein, who believe that all of our constructs of reality are language games. So the way we construct the language to understand reality. But there's no objective reality. There's no necessity to perceive it a certain way. And so therefore they translate that into values. And if there's no objective values, then there's no right or wrong. There's no reason to suspect that human beings have an inherent value from God, because Harari believes that God is just another narrative invented by human beings. So therefore, right, if you killed billions of people, to people like Harari, it might be beneficial because you'd be sparing the resources of the earth for the few that were transhuman and could utilize those resources more efficiently, and they would think have a better management of the earth because they wouldn't pollute and they wouldn't use carbon dioxide and produced by hydrocarbon fuels. But again, all of the narrative of the left, after you make this distinction that there is no objective values, now you're into the territory where you're beginning to celebrate schizophrenia. So that if somebody wants to say, well, my sex is different from my gender is that of a transgender animal that lived 3 centuries ago, instead of sending the person to a psychiatrist, you say we've invented a new gender.
Yeah. Or what about the furries? The children that are running around pretending to be animals, defecating in boxes,
litter boxes
in schools.
Yeah, I had putting tampons in men's bathrooms and saying that men can lactate and feed babies and men can have babies. I mean, these people are absolutely insane.
So the real question is, what do you think President Trump, yesterday when he's making this announcement, I kind of noticed okay, he's doing it really quickly, which I thought was very odd. It was at a very odd time, which we knew that the majority, even the media, was more interested in the J6ers and, that he's released these J6ers as if he's released a bunch of terrorists out into our country, when the actuality is the Biden regime had released the terrorists. But what I saw, or I think I saw, was President Trump basically stepping away, basically saying, no, I'm you wanted, you gave me the money to get into office, to give you this platform. So here it is. But yet I saw that he had distanced himself way away from them, way away from them. And to the point where I almost thought it was comical that it seemed like, the smallest people on the earth, where they were actually having to pull out the stool from the podium to let them speak. And I felt like he was almost chuckling, American people, wake up. This is your opportunity. Look, it was almost like you were watching a clown show. I'm sorry to laugh, but I literally felt like we were watching a clown show yesterday.
Well, it had that impact, but Trump was, first of all, they have a lot of money, and he loves the idea of having a lot of money invested in the economy. And they're talking about subjects in which he's not conversant, about how, if you listen to what they didn't talk about mRNA vaccines except very indirectly. They were talking about how if you had AI programs, it could help reverse cancer because the program would be able to take early diagnostic signals and treat the cancer before it became untreatable. And there are certainly ideas there that you could say that AI could analyze a biological test and detect early signs and could design remedies. It's a logical proposition. It has, it can, a computer can beat a human being on chess or on Go, because again, it can register in its memory bank a much larger set of moves and outcomes, and it can compute them very quickly, whereas a human can't do that many calculations. We're limited to seeing a couple moves ahead, and the permutations and combinations we look at are fairly limited. Supercomputers and quantum computers are going to be more powerful calculators. So that was a reasonable proposition, and the idea that they're going to build data centers and use all this energy and be able to advance our ability to analyze quickly. I mean, AI will have certain advantages, and it will have certain practical applications. But when they get into what they were really talking about, which was the development of medications based on this mRNA technology that have to do with re-engineering human beings and re-engineering our basic biology, altering our DNA and our RNA, or altering our DNA through RNA, is a very dangerous idea, and certainly one that is not likely to produce the results they think it will produce, especially if it's handled by demons who make sure that we're reproducing through RNA the spike protein that is all through then propagated throughout our bodies, which is what some of these vaccines seem designed to do. And so therefore, it was a naive approach, and it again shows Donald Trump can easily be conned when it comes to medicine, which is one field that Donald Trump has a blind spot on. He's not medically trained. He's not trained, analytically in terms of statistics or, research analysis or the ability to read these medical papers. So he is vulnerable to a good story. A good story with.
He's going to use Robert Kennedy Jr. to basically, say, okay, I'm glad you presented this to me. And obviously he's like seeing what the American people, especially on Twitter, are kind of crazy over this. But do you think he's going to come back and basically just say, well, Kennedy, like kind of let them battle it out? Or how do you see?
I think Kennedy is going to wait until he's confirmed.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Excuse me. And he's going to take it very cautiously until he's confirmed. He's not going to be making statements which would hurt his confirmation. So he's going to be largely quiet. And Trump does something like this, Kennedy's going to sit back and say, I'm not going to comment. That's okay. Let him go ahead and do that. Now, when Kennedy gets in there and begins doing policy, I think it changes. I think Kennedy has an intent to do some more education of Donald Trump, which involves, sitting down and talking to him a bit. And I'm sure they'll travel together some, and I'm sure there'll be opportunities for it. But Kennedy's going to have to basically say that, I would encourage him to start out with the vaccines given to babies and autism, and show him that, the correlation between the number of vaccines that we're today giving, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 vaccines before the child turns, I think, 3. It's a large number of vaccines. And on autism. And showing them before these vaccines were introduced, we had very little autism. Today, we've got a lot of autism. Now, that's not necessarily proof that the vaccines cause it. But when then you get in and look at the vaccines and see what's in these vaccines and work out the biological and chemical processes by which they operate, you can begin to see that the link is more causal link is more firmly established. And so,
And then oh, sorry, go ahead.
well, I think it's an education process with Donald Trump, and the hard part of it is he's going to have to admit he was bamboozled, and
Yeah.
Donald Trump does not enjoy doing that.
Yeah, he doesn't like to. He likes to just move on. He's the move on type instead of saying, "Wow, you know." Really
He wants to celebrate all the successes that he's had. He doesn't want to ever admit a failure.
Yeah.
It's like no failures can happen in his life because he doesn't perceive them as such. And so therefore, but yet, you know, there are a lot of things that are still yet shaping up. There will be a major effort to investigate or possibly prosecute Fauci, even though he was given a pardon. I think it will be challenged in the courts. Fauci can now be made to testify without protection from, you know, he can't use the Fifth Amendment any longer, testified about crimes that he may have committed, because the Supreme Court has ruled that the acceptance of a pardon is, in a sense, the acceptance of guilt. And so now Fauci can be called in without Fifth Amendment protection. He can be questioned about, you know, why did you do this? How did you do it? Who'd you do it with? Tell us the truth. You can't be prosecuted for it, so you don't have any protection. You've got to answer our questions. If you lie, you'll commit another crime.
Yep.
So Fauci's now vulnerable.
No, and we know from even my cover work with James O'Keefe that the scientists that work directly with him, the doctors and scientists that were doing the studies, have come forward saying that Dr. Fauci was never anywhere around. He was like a political person pushing them to do things that they otherwise might not do, all while at times threatening, you know, to take away funding for things that they might want to do, like, you know, real studies that they wanted to do, you know. And so anytime you've got, you know, weaponization like over you, you know, not everybody is as strong as maybe you are or that I am, where we're willing to, you know, to stand up for the truth and find out the truth. So I do hope that we are able to find out what actually happened with I call him Dr. Fauci because I can't even, you know, call him Dr. Fauci because I feel like he has so bamboozled the American public.
We will get more of the truth out on the vaccines and on the pandemic. That will be investigated. I'm also very deeply involved in the election fraud. And we have a website, gods5stones.com. I played a role with Dr. Andrew Paquette, who had found algorithms in the state data board, state board of election voter registration databases. These algorithms are cryptographic schemes, and they allow the creation of false voters who yet can get legitimate state IDs and be hidden as duplicate votes back into the database that they're very hard to find. Yet they can be called upon to be voted when they need to. So when you see elections stop being counting, and then, you know, the next what happens next is a bunch of that's the website. And I'll probably have to change that headline a little bit, because I'm now saying that because we found these algorithms and exposed them, and we found them in the battleground states, found them in Pennsylvania and Georgia. These are a variety of states where we found the algorithms: Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Texas, and Wisconsin. That it was likely they didn't use the algorithms for the presidential election. In fact, we know they didn't. But and I think these algorithms were placed in the state database by the intelligence agencies, who I think are now trying to run our elections. And certainly these algorithms are intelligence agency complexity. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, Trump's attorneys are now investigating this. And I think a number of the U.S. House of Representatives and Senate seats were stolen by the algorithms in the 2024 election. And we'll be able to go back and be able to challenge some of these in the courts, I think, over the next few weeks and months. And I want to get these algorithms out of the state databases before the 2026 elections, because otherwise Trump will emerge from them with either losing the majority in the House or Senate, or being so narrow he can't govern. Right now, it appears a lot of the Democrats are cooperating with the GOP, or certainly with the Trump agenda. And I think I think the woke have suffered a massive defeat. And I think even watching the Davos today and watching Donald Trump's speech to Davos, that the woke is now broke and it's lost. And I think the critical theory has been exposed. I think people have rejected this leftist agenda. And I think now it's time to get rid of these algorithms and expose the intelligence agencies for what they are, which is criminal. Our intelligence agencies have been running the drug trade since their inception, including in the Vietnam War. They are also running pedophilia and the sex trade at the border. You can't run these operations without a bank. In 2011, I caught HSBC money laundering for the Mexican drug cartels. And my research on that was reported to Department of Homeland Security and the Senate Permanent Investigating Committee. Ultimately, there was the HSBC was fined by the Department of Justice criminal case, $9 billion, and the reports were all that they were money laundering for the drug cartels. Well, the CIA had to be in the middle of it, in the Department of Treasury, because every wire transfer that goes over the federal wires is monitored.
Yes.
Yet, so this is where the CIA gets their dark operations money, and it's time that it come to an end. We have criminal intelligence agencies that lie, can kill a president, Jack Kennedy, get away with it for 61 years, controlling the media. Well, I think Donald Trump is disruptive to this entire deep state agenda. It's why he's so seriously opposed. And so far, in the second term, it doesn't take the first 100 days. We're recording this on the third day of his presidency, and he's already done more than most presidents do in 4 years.
Yes.
And I don't think it's about to stop.
No, I don't either. And not only that, but the 1,500 people that he released as J6ers were very strong activist veterans who were, diligently researching, who were recording, who were investigators, who were journalists, who were the most outspoken in their communities. So had they not shut their voices down for the past 4 years, we would be even a lot further along in public perception, because they couldn't do it without shutting those people's voices down. I'm very convinced of that, in terms of even the people themselves, because when we all disperse out into our communities and we're talking amongst each other, that is the way we get somewhere. When we're sharing content, when we are sharing, whether it's a book, whether it is just a piece of information that may affect you, like HSBC, might affect a lot of our listeners out here right now. So in terms of, what it has, we know that the COVID-19 vaccinations have severely affected a lot of people and a lot of their families, and a lot of people have suffered, they're dead, or are having medical issues now. And we have seen firsthand that, that number one, Fauci had to be pardoned for what? He hasn't been convicted of any crimes yet. So that tells you that Biden knows that he was guilty of crimes, and that we were going to start to ask questions. But the reality is, too, Dr. Corsi, that some people are saying is that that it's a possibility that the pardons that were issued by Biden may not be completed pardons because they were not completed before Biden actually left office. What is your take on the pardons themselves?
Well, I think mostly they can be challenged because they involved possible crimes. In other words, they weren't pardons for an indictment or a crime that had been proven at a trial, a conviction. And Supreme Court ought to really weigh in on this question. The first kind of blanket pardon was given to Richard Nixon by Gerald Ford right after Nixon resigned, when Ford pardoned Nixon for any Watergate offenses. Well, Nixon was not being indicted and he hadn't been charged with the crime.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether you can issue a pardon for a non-offense, but that something might be an offense or might have been an offense, it's very broad and it's very vague, and it's a pardon in anticipation of wrongdoing being proven. It's like to prevent wrongdoing from being proven. I think there could be a legitimate Supreme Court challenge that exceeds these kind of blanket pardons exceed the power authority. That will be, I'm sure, challenged. And secondly, even if you can't prosecute Fauci, you can make him testify and get out of him what the information you want, because as I pointed out earlier, he no longer has Fifth Amendment protection. And he can be questioned. If he lies, he may have committed another crime. That may be.
His wife was the head of the NIH, right? I mean, his wife, Christine, what is her name? Christine Grayson or something. She was head of the NIH at the time of the whole COVID scam.
Well, she could be. There are others who can be charged. Yes. Yes.
Christine Grady.
Yeah. But the point is,
so
even the Biden family. I mean, I don't know that Trump is going to go after the Biden family. He kind of indicated that if Biden would limit his pardons to his family, that Trump would not go after the family. I don't think Trump really wants to be politicizing against the president a criminal investigation. That I think that's we need to get our politics out of the justice system rather than use the justice system to go after political opponents. And even if the political opponents have created egregious crimes, I would rather say let's go after Fauci, because going after Biden, I'm not sure makes any sense at all. Biden probably be dead in a couple of years the way he looks.
Right.
And I mean, it's not. And going after the Biden family, again, do we really want that to be the subject of our politics? No, Fauci is different. Fauci is not in the presidential office. Fauci may have committed crimes against humanity in a massive nature. I think he did.
Yes.
And there has to be some accountability. So the issue is, how deeply do we want to investigate these things? There's things that can be investigated about Benghazi. Lies have been told by Hillary Clinton about Hillary Clinton's private email server. The fact that she and Bill Clinton enriched themselves over Haiti and over Indian earthquakes and all kinds of other ways in which they exploited tragedy to benefit themselves. The private email server. I mean, there's any number of these crimes that could be investigated. I think the ones that are going to be investigated are the election fraud in 2020. And I think the work I'm doing on the algorithms is going to play a central role in that. And that's 501c3, and we are raising additional contributions for that. We're trying to build a war chest on that.
Is that the God Five Stones?
Yes, that's God's Five Stones.
Okay.
And I want to get additional funding in that so we can expose the algorithms probably in all 50 states and get rid of them. That's going to be a major issue in the near future. And you can donate there with all those blue buttons.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we'll go after the election fraud. I think we're going to go after Fauci and the medical fraud. I think the J6ers are going to get legal cases, and we're going to get exposed there. The corruption in the Department of Justice and the courts and in the prison system. So I think these are going to be investigations that will go forward. Investigation of Crossfire Hurricane and the Russia collusion scheme. these are going to get investigated. Whether Benghazi gets investigated or whether we go back to some of the scandals all the way back to the Clinton administration, I don't know that we'll go that deep. Okay, look at the Clinton.
I'm hoping that we'll go back to the Berry Seal. I mean, obviously, the JFK files are supposed to be.
JFK, yes, we have to do JFK, and I hope he gets the Martin Luther King and the Robert Kennedy assassination files. I hope we get all of those.
We also have to have 9/11.
9/11 would be good to get.
Yeah, and what's your take on 9/11?
Well, I mean, you got to ask, why do buildings that weren't hit by the airplanes fall down?
Yeah.
I mean, there's, I think, many questions about 9/11 that don't fit together. I've never thought they fit together.
Right. I've interviewed Richard Gage extensively about 9/11, and those videos we're having to replay a lot of these videos because they get struck every time we put them up, almost anywhere.
Well, there's evidence of a controlled demolition.
Yes.
It certainly looks like a controlled demolition. And some of the chemical evidence suggests that there were explosions that made it a chemical, detonation of the building. It certainly came down that way. I mean, those buildings should mostly have the top sections hit by the airplanes would have fallen into the bottom section, but it would not necessarily have toppled the bottom section. And it's not the natural way those buildings should have come down. So there's engineering questions, there's chemical evidence, there's physical evidence in the films. There's a lot of questions that got rushed to judgment.
Well, and are you aware that the same 9/11 investigators that investigated 9/11 also were called in to investigate the Surfside building collapse, the Champlain Towers collapse here in Florida?
No, I have not looked at those collapses, and I have not followed those. I've mostly been following.
It was interesting. It was the same investigation team, I mean, so it's like, why would we call in the same investigators that we've questioned for 9/11? Why would we call in that same team, from Israel to investigate something in Surfside, Florida? It just seems very odd. Almost $50 million went missing in terms of they raised funds for the victims of Surfside. Well, the victims of Surfside didn't get anything from the $50 million. The county, the city, it's all questionable as to, where did this money go and what was it used for? Because it was raised, from the public in the name of, we're going to do something great. It'd be like, giving to God's five stones and, people expecting it to go towards election integrity work and then it not going there. It's a very odd situation where, they raised the $50 million and it never went to any victims of Surfside. I mean,
well, a lot of things. I mean, in terms of all the things that could be investigated, you've got going. They're legion, because we're basically living in a Truman Show that is created by the CIA. Do you want to investigate BlackRock and its role? Funding wars, causing wars, to then come in and do the rebuilding. I mean, who's going to benefit from the rebuilding of Ukraine? Well, Blackwater. Who's going to benefit from all the money spent on the munitions? Blackwater. Mm-hmm. So does Blackwater have an interest in creating wars? Yes. Economic interest in creating wars. Does BlackRock have an economic interest in creating disease? Well, if it starts investing in pharmaceutical companies, yes. And so, how deep do these $1 trillion funds go in controlling our reality? Controlling, and how directly tied are they to the intelligence agencies?
And what do you think that we should do about it?
Well, I think we should basically, my solutions are pretty, I like to frame dramatic solutions to get people to really understand the severity of the problem. So I'd say, let's move the entire bureaucracy, the federal government, to Death Valley, and let them live in Quonset huts and give them all the solar panels and wind turbines they want. If they don't like that, too bad. I'd say we ought to start reducing the size of the federal government by closing down by department. Close down the education department. Close down the transportation department. close down half of them.
Yeah.
Close down 2/3 of them. Turn them into housing for the former military, so that military are not living homeless. Make this a plan for, we take these buildings in Washington, and these will be the new homes of the military when they retire. They'll have an opportunity to have one of those units.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I mean, so intelligence agencies, well, just close them. If they can't operate legally, if they're inherently clandestine, they're inherently powered with massive technology that can, record every conversation that occurs in the world. And if Harari's in power, allow you to try to read what people are thinking as well as what they're saying. Well, I mean, we don't need these. And so therefore, and again, the things that I think here Trump, and I know Jack Kennedy was trying to do with, to reduce nuclear arms. I mean, having these massive nuclear arms, we almost can't fight a war anymore because the temptation of it to go nuclear, and clearly Ukraine was within inches of going nuclear under Biden. I think there were massive forces in the Biden regime that wanted to go nuclear in order to have him not have to be losing the election and out of power. I think there were thoughts of getting a nuclear war and canceling the election. I mean, these intelligence agencies are capable of doing these things. They are, assassinate leaders. They change elections. I think they decided they can do it here in the United States. I want the assassination attempts on Donald Trump investigated. But, we do all these investigations, and they're each going to be time consuming and costly. And so we've got to pick the ones that I think are most effective to do, of which the public demands. I think currently the J6ers are going to demand investigations because they are, as you pointed out, they are highly vocal, they are highly trained, they are articulate. They will merge into, now we're going to have books and media with the J6ers. I'll probably participate in creating some of those forums.
Yep. They were asking, are you willing to participate in some of the forums with them? And do you have any recommendations for them? I saw where some of them have asked me, they have actually, some of them actually have their books written, and they were asking for publishers, and I told them that I would ask you.
Yeah, I'm an acquiring editor for Post Hill Press, and I don't think we want to publish 30 or 40 of them, but we'd like, I'd like to see what's being done and figure out which are the ones that have the best chance of making an impact.
Okay.
And I'm open to it. I've talked with Trennis Evans and said, Trennis, let's find some books. I published. I published Trennis's book. I'll pull a couple of books here that I published recently. Let me just pull them down from the file here.
That would be great. Yeah, because a lot of them just need some sort of direction or.
Okay, I've got two that I've just published with Post Hill Press. One is Trennis Evans' book. Trennis, of course, plays a major role with the J6ers, and with it's called "Call It Insurrection, Comrade" by Trennis Evans, and he's widely known among the J6ers.
And guys, I'm going to put the links down below to this too, so that way you can get them directly on Amazon. You can just click the link below in the description so that you'll have this.
And Trennis was, he was the guy who had the megaphone in the Capitol, and Trennis was convicted, I believe, of a misdemeanor, served very little time. He basically beat the federal government. But it's a very fascinating book. Another one that we published, I think is going to also be hopefully a big book. This is called Silicon Satan. It's by Craig Lund.
Okay.
Craig Lund. Silicon Satan. It's a novel. And it is about, Craig was a programmer in Silicon Valley. He was on the fast track to being a billionaire. And he begged out of it. But what he learned was that, and the book is really explicit discussion of the Satanism in Silicon Valley, including the grooming of children into sex, including all kinds of bizarre sex, orgies, killing people for sexual stimulation,
Wow.
rituals. They kill and eat babies, mind babies for certain hallucinatory drugs. I mean, it's a very, very dark book. And it explains what you're going to find out with the Jeffrey Epstein and the P. Diddy investigations, that a large portion of Hollywood, Silicon Valley, and our Congress are compromised by participating in, sex-driven orgies, involve rape and all kinds of other crimes, pedophilia, etc., and then they are blackmailed.
Yes.
And it's very dark.
And anybody that tries to come out about it or out of the system regarding it, they utilize the family court system to start to attack them, to take their children, to traffic the children, utilizing Title 4E, which is our Social Security funds, in order to take them into children's homes or into foster care, is what we're told. I would encourage people to almost think the opposite of whatever our government tells us. If they say it's foster care, it's like foster hurt, So because a lot of the children, the majority, 80% of them, I want to say, the statistics say that 80% of them actually come out hurt, and they would have been better off in their own original homes, left, with their parents, or sometimes they're adopted out to where they are given to very wealthy people who really, I'm not saying that they don't want children, but they've given them everything. And those are the kids often on the street, on drugs now.
Well, if you read this and see it's hard to read this novel. I guarantee if you read it, you'll never forget it. It's a very compelling read. Once you start into it, it's hard to put it down. But it is difficult to read because you're going to read about some very, very dark things. And getting out of this is almost impossible. So therefore, when you see the satanic nature of Silicon Valley in Hollywood and increasingly Congress and in Washington, you realize that Satanism is alive and well and dark. If you try to get out of it, they may not just kill you. They may first torture and kill your children while you're watching and then kill you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and so
it's sickening. I always think of it as a disease itself, in terms of, I know it's defined as a religion, but it's
evil. It's an anti-religion. It's the evil. Perceiving the heart of evil for what it is. I've done a lot of work over the last year with Archbishop Vigano in Italy, and he was excommunicated by the Pope. In fact, I published his book on the excommunication, wrote the preface to it. It was I Accuse, and published it in Italian in Italy, and in English. If I say I published it, I was the acquiring editor for Post Hill Press. Post Hill Press, Anthony Zaccardi, who I've been my friend and publisher for many years, since he was the one who, at Simon & Schuster, published Abomination, which I wrote in 2008. Then he created Post Hill Press, and I've been working with him ever since. But this book is a very short book, but it's a very important book. And again, it defines and examines the deep nature, the satanic nature of the of this dark, deep state evil, and it shows also the deep church, and I think there's increasing evidence and good evidence that the CIA engineered the retirement of Pope Benedict and the installment of this LGBT Bergoglio as Pope Francis. So j'accuse in Italian and English is the Archbishop's, what he's doing is he's accusing Bergoglio, Pope Francis, of being the heretic. And I think he's right. And I think it's, the dark evil has gotten into the Catholic Church, as liberation theology has gotten into many Protestant churches, and it subverts the religion. And in Catholicism, the problem has been both the pedophilia of the priests, which have been a massive scandal, and the homosexuality of the priests. So you have Archbishop McCarran, who was what they say laicized. He was stripped of the priesthood. He was not excommunicated, but he had sex both with young boys and with seminarians whom he would vacation with and invite into his bed. And it's been very well documented. And Bergoglio was saying again, this is evil, and it is anti-life. It's one of the reasons why you get the depopulationists who would take and create not a vaccine, doesn't cure you of anything, but it might propagate the spike protein throughout your body and ultimately kill you. They think that's a worthy thing to do. And
some of the same people who are doing that, they're also the same ones that are also funding abortion, but yet funding both sides to fight about abortion.
Well, the death cult that has dominated Satanism, and I view the Democratic Party now as a neo-Marxist party. It is not a in any way Democratic Party, and they want to fund abortion. They think you can, they fund euthanasia. They're solidly behind the mRNA. Want to have totalitarian control. I'm showing a lot of the books I've written and a lot of things I've been doing. The most recent book I've written, and I hope to do a lot more of this in 2025 and 2026, is I've written a book called The Anti-Globalist Manifesto. It's my most recent book here, The Anti-Globalist Manifesto.
I was going to ask you about that because that's, I noticed that book you haven't really spoken a lot about.
It was published by War Room Books and Bannon, and then Bannon went to prison. And my plan was I was going to publicize it on War Room Books, and I just have not gotten. And then Bannon came out, and we had the presidential election, and so therefore, it hasn't had a good cycle to publicize this book. But I intend to do quite a bit more with it. I intend to actually create an anti-globalist alliance in the United States and in Europe. And I would like to do that in the next couple of years. But I'll show you two more books. The other two that I'm part of the trilogy, which I want to write the third book on. Here. Hold on.
So yeah, Dr.
And, the design of the covers is a signal that these two books really fit together. So this one here on the Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change.
This one, okay.
Which has been very highly reviewed, very favorably reviewed. And these are significant books. This book's it's almost 400 pages long. And I include a lot of the science in this book. And it's one of the better books I've written. I may write a book, extract parts of this and write a book on abiotic oil, because I've for years been explaining to people that oil is not a biological product. It's not dinosaur soup.
What three climate change lies do you think people should know immediately?
Well, I mean, the first one is that, and by the way, the second book on that, which is it's a harder book to read, but it's equally important, which is The Truth About Neo-Marxism, Cultural Maoism, and Anarchy. And both of these are two of the more important books I've written. And I will get, the third book will be about transhumanism, artificial intelligence, and perpetual life extension. And I'll write that book. Hopefully, I'll start that book later this year. But these two books are very important together. And I call them the Great Awakening Trilogy. to get people to really understand what this is all about. Lies and pseudoscience in the direction of creating a totalitarian state where very few people become transhuman and the rest of us are not needed. We can all be slaves. And with massive extinction of human life on Earth. That's the agenda. The carbon dioxide, three major lies. Carbon dioxide is a minor molecule in the atmosphere, 0.004%, I believe, or 0.04%. It's not powerful enough to cause massive changes in the Earth's temperature. And carbon dioxide increases usually follow global warming. They don't cause it geologically. I'd say the second major lie is that the nature of the mathematics of the way the climate works are nonlinear. They can't be predicted because the equations don't allow, very small differences in measurement are very big differences in outcome. So all these climate models that are predicting that we're going to have, disaster if we get 1.5 degrees above the temperature in the pre-industrial era, all these things are nonsense because the climate models themselves are inherently not reliable. If you have our mathematics involve numbers that are not divisible in equal. Pi has an unlimited number of digits after to the right of the decimal. So therefore, you can't rationalize pi. It's infinite in its ability to be measured. Well, that means you can't. There's so much of our mathematics that's like that. You can't get accurate measurements. The models aren't going to turn out right. The Earth doesn't need to rationalize pi in order to operate. It just operates. And the third one is that as human beings, we have a major impact upon the Earth climate. We don't. Far greater forces, the ocean currents in the Pacific, especially, the nature of the way we travel around the Earth, the Milankovitch cycles, where our orbit gets more elliptical every 100,000 years. We have an ice age. The variations that occur naturally, the Earth's temperature has varied dramatically over millennia. But the point is, the Earth's weather operates to distribute heat that hits along the equator from the sun. It distributes it to the upper atmosphere, and it distributes it to the poles. If we did not have weather to distribute heat, you would have the Earth would not be habitable. If we didn't have carbon dioxide, the Earth wouldn't be habitable. In fact, we need a certain amount of carbon dioxide in order to sustain life because it's required for photosynthesis and other processes. So the fundamental understanding of how the climate works means that we've basically been taught nonsense by the climate hoax. Now, in 4 minutes, I've got another podcast. I think we've gone on.
No, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that I was gonna say, like, that was great in terms of the information, Dr. Corsi. We thank you very much for being on and answering.
I'll come back. I'll be happy to come back.
Would love for you to. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of questions. We did not take this live because I wanted to make sure I get all your bio and get all the links and everything down that we've spoken about. And we'll clip this into even some small clips for other sites, and it'll appear on Rumble, Lindell TV, Brighteon, and Truth Social, because in its entirety it will get struck from Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So we'll make sure to get those clips out. But I want to thank you very much for being here today, and thank you for your work. Your body of work is beyond anything educational wise, I mean, I would love to see you, as the Secretary of Education and rewriting our textbooks. And hopefully,
Well, if you had me as Secretary of Education, the first thing I'd do would be close the department down.
Okay, well,
And I'd have the textbooks written locally, and then not
right,
controlled nationally.
right.
So
Well,
I'd probably make it either very good or very bad Secretary of Education.
well, I was actually thinking that, if Trump did appoint people as secretaries of different things and they did shut the departments down, that would speak volumes. And so, that would be a very interesting thing to come up with an absolutely different plan, which I would love more than anything to see.
I doubt I'd get confirmed on that platform.
I was gonna say, I don't think any of us are getting confirmed on anything other than being conspiracy theorists. So, but I call us conspiracy truthists because I'm really out of theories at this very point. Even though we get them by the day, but it seems like they prove more and more truth. Dr. Corsi, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it, and I'll definitely have you back on. And God bless you.
Well, God bless, and you and your audience, and say hello to Admiral Kubik for me. And,
Absolutely.
And let's support our veterans.
Absolutely. And actually, I'm going to end up with showing people exactly how to join this. So I'm going to drop you off. Thank you. Go to your other podcast. We enjoyed having you so much.
God bless.
Thank you guys all for joining me here on Patriots Perspective today. I want to make sure that you know what we are talking about here. Hold on. I'm going to pull up. I want everybody to go to Veterans for America First. That is VFAF.us, VFAF.us. And you will see this site. This is the first group for Veterans for Trump. Before President Trump came down the escalator, Veterans for Trump organization was there, Veterans for America First. And you can join. You can see the team here. You can see the history. But I want you to go to state chapters. Go to state chapters. You can sign up, register, donate. But you can go to state chapters, see if there's a chapter in your area. No matter what, make sure that you do sign up for the national chapter and your state chapter. So if you're in Florida, guess what? You're going to be stuck with me. Okay. So I'm just kidding. But there's actually a large group of us here in Florida. We are here to make Florida even better than it already is. So hold on. I'm not sure why this just dropped off. So let me go back here. Go back to, so you can see the Florida site. So you're going to sign up on both. Make sure that you just go here to volunteer. That's how you actually sign up. Just go to volunteer. You'll see the information here for you to basically be able to sign up. Okay. So once you sign up, I'll get your information. And if you are a serviceman, family of the service, or if you're just a regular citizen and you want to volunteer, there's options for you here as to why you want to volunteer. And we want to make sure if you're a first responder or a police detective or a police officer or a fireman, any kind of serviceman in any capacity, please feel free to join. We would love to have you. Our oath is there is no expiration date. So we basically know that when you are in service, you're always in service. So we want to make sure that you guys do sign up, volunteer, and take back your country at the grassroots level. That's what we are doing with Veterans for America First. We also have spaces on Veterans for America First. So you can actually go to Veterans for America First Twitter account. Let me actually share this with you. You can go to Veterans for America First on Twitter, and that is VFAF War Room. So make sure that you go to VFAF War Room. And I will actually put that in the link, in the description below, so that you can make sure that you have Dr. Corsi's links, make sure that you have all of his websites that he mentioned, all of the books that he mentioned. I'm going to make sure that those are categorized for you. And so that you can easily find everything that you need within a click. God bless you all. Thank you so much for joining me on Patriots Perspective. I am your corruption and your propaganda destroyer, the government gangster, are going down, and we're not staying silent. And we are going to get these investigated. We are not going to shut up until we do, and we're going to use our First Amendment right until our last breath. So thank you all for joining me. Make sure that you do like, subscribe. Make sure you go to patriotsperspective.com additionally, so that we can make sure that we email you directly into your inboxes, because we do have shows coming out at least every week. Right now, we have a lot of different shows coming out based on things that President Trump is actually doing, on new legislation, for what Veterans for America First is doing, along with the J6 interviews. So make sure that you are following that. And we're going to see these courts change, I believe, in drastic ways. And we're going to see a lot of people resign from not only their offices, but, we're already seeing it on a daily basis, but also from corporations. So God bless you all. It's going to be a fun ride. So make sure that you get your popcorn, and make sure you subscribe and come along.
Remember, take action. Take action. Don't let big tech win. Share this video with a friend now. Most importantly, do unto others as you would have others do unto you.